Welcome to the O Brother Podcast with hosts Dan and Mike Smith, brothers from the same mother with different opinions on movies, TV, video games, and more, plus celebrity interviews. Get ready, get set. It's time for the O Brother Podcast. Back to the O Brother Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Smith. Alongside me, as always, my brother from the same mother, Mike Smith.
This really feels like we just did this.
It does indeed, yeah.
Like what? 2 and 3 days?
Mm-hmm. But this is
special episode.
This is a special episode, yeah. This is the one that I've been itching to get to.
I'm all nervous that I'm going to screw it up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ah. You're actually got the nerves on this one.
First time, I
Probably
think.
because you feel an obligation to me.
That's what it is.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because everyone else I've gone on or we've interviewed, I didn't have any problem.
You know, August 1st, when you're getting this episode of the O Brother Podcast, and we have a very, very special guest on this episode, and be joining us here in just a few minutes.
I needed him on my last. Well, I actually wasn't on the show. I was just in the chat. I got beat up by everybody.
Maybe you can bring that up when we introduce this person. So look, we've done a handful of interviews on the show. I've been lucky to land every single one, but this was another one where I just sort of like,
right,
and see if I could get him on the hook, and much to my pleasure,
the poor bastard said yes.
He accepted. Yeah, clearly had nothing else to do on this night, and it's we're dealing with a time difference here too, so. This is
not too bad. It's
just an hour.
Yeah, not like it's the West Coast. So that's what it feels like.
Right.
Usually when we're usually when we're this late, it feels like we're talking to somebody from California.
Yeah, and we were saying how when we do these, we were talking about this, I think, yesterday, how you can see them come into, what we call the green room or the waiting room.
Right.
And that's always kind of wild because it's like, oh, there they are. I'm looking at this list of questions we got. I don't even know if we'll get to all of this.
No, we won't.
He'd be like, okay, guys, I can spare 10 minutes,
Yeah. In fact,
because now let's face it, he's chewed into 10 minutes of our time. Let's be honest.
That's true.
He
owes us an extra
10 minutes we're never going to get back, I suspect.
10 minutes of flipping channels or something.
This is when they, like on the Larry Sanders show, how much time we got?
Stretch. Yeah.
45 seconds.
Really seems like more
Hank,
than that.
you don't want to do that song about your dad you've always wanted to do you? Artie? About 25 seconds.
No, Hank's always like, do you want me to do the soft shoe?
Yeah, well, in this particular episode, he was not much up for, I think it was when his dad died.
Oh, okay, that's why. Because normally Hank's like, I'll take it.
And remember, it's the one where, and for those of you that God, I hope you've seen the Larry Sanders show. It's on HBO Max if you want to get it. A genius Gary Shandling production. But this is the one where they got too many guests and they don't want to bump anybody because they got Rob Lowe. He's got a supermodel Vendela that's on. He's not going to bump her, of course.
Right.
And then he's got Jeff Cesario, who he can't bump because he's bumped him like 12 times.
And he brings them out really quick. It's like 2 questions. Like, okay.
Well, that's a different episode where they kind of,
is
but
it?
it's similar though. He is kind of, okay, he's cutting them off.
Right.
It's like, David Duchovny is another one.
Right.
And he does the old, what's that, Artie? Oh, we lost the clip. We lost the clip, folks. I don't know what happened. And then they cut Duchovny's like, what is this? You lost the clip bullshit. Don't give me that,
Yeah, right.
But Hank comes into the office early in the episode and says, Hey guys, you remember when you said you'd give me some airtime when my dad died? And he's like, yeah,
Oh, that's right.
today's the day. Tonight's the night, he said.
Right.
And then he's like, so how much time you need? I need about 4 minutes.
60 seconds.
2 minutes. I can do it in 2. And then you hear Larry goes, okay, give him a minute and a half. They keep chopping it down on Hank as the episode
Didn't it wind
goes
up
on.
like 30 seconds and they cut it?
Well, it's because Hank, when it gets to it, he comes clean and he's like, you know what? I didn't even really know this guy. So I don't want to do this. And then he just shuts up. And that's when Larry is like, trying to fill 2.5 minutes. So it's like, Artie, how much time? About 45 seconds.
Yeah.
It's just brilliant.
So you didn't know your dad. That's good.
And he starts off, remember when he's Phil, one of the writers, is trying to come up with like a eulogy for the air. And he's practicing it with Hank. And he says, okay, my father wasn't a famous man. He wasn't a well-known man. And then you hear Hank going, blah, 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 blah. Come on, Phil. He's like, well, I didn't really know anything about your dad, Hank. I mean,
yeah, what
it would
am I
help if
supposed
I
to
had
put?
something. Yeah.
Right.
And then Brian, that was became his assistant, was like, well, did you go to ball games together? Were there any special films that you went to see together? And you could see Hank getting annoyed. He's like, it doesn't matter. You don't need to know any of that. Just come up with something, because he didn't have a relationship with him.
Right.
I think he left him when he was like 4 years old or something.
Yeah, he was never. That would have been a good character to add. They could have, like they had his agent.
Yeah.
No, you remember Hank's agent, the old guy?
Yes.
That they could have made a father figure for Hank.
It was like
that
Sally
would have been somebody who was totally disgusted
Morty.
with him, hated entertainment. That would have been a funny character if they wanted to add that.
It's just, I mean, I watch it. I still watch it constantly. I know every single line.
I was going to tell you, I'm watching something new now at night. Not
a comedy series.
No, like I usually watch The Simpsons every night to kind of get me.
It's your white noise. Yeah. Right.
And, I set the timer and I kind of go off to an episode of The Simpsons. Well, and how long have I been doing that?
I go off. Oh, years.
A long time.
Years. Yeah.
Almost like back to the start of the
season 7. Maybe.
I was living in Orlando when I started it. So,
yeah.
So lately I've been doing a new show to kind of fall asleep to, but I'm not going to talk about it until.
You want to bring it up with the guest?
No, I want to talk about it when we do the.
our next episode.
Yeah.
Okay.
When we're going to talk about childhood stuff.
Got it. Yeah.
Because it's a show from back then.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And I guess we have to be true to that. Again, we've got an episode coming up where we're going to talk about it. It's really sort of a listener request that, favorite childhood TV shows and actors and actresses from when we grew up. That was also
it?
Oh. Yeah, he asked that as well.
And games too, right?
Yeah, and specifically games that you wanted but didn't get, that you thought about buying later as an adult. That's a great question.
Yeah, so tough.
But I can think of a few. It's tough with me though. I was so spoiled rotten.
You were, because you had me and I had money.
Yeah, you always immediately like to come in and take full credit for that.
Well,
now, okay, see, this is the moment. This is the moment where the man himself is in the green room. We're not going to waste any time at all. Going to bring him in.
I was just about to kill with that.
I hope I don't get a copyright strike for saying this, but I'm going to introduce him. This guy's a legend. I can't believe he agreed to be on the podcast. So it's our good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey guys.
Hey, Jimmy.
Wow, a legend. You didn't say that, I would have combed my hair.
Well, listen, Mike
Speaking of
is
hair,
constantly dealing with the hair snafus. He's
my hair is look how long. I mean, it's about to take over the show.
Oh, it looks great, man.
So we were chatting before we brought you in, and we were just kind of riffing on some stuff, and then I got your email, and we were trying not to give away who the guest was yet, and I said, well, he's actually working the other gig right now. I said, like, Jimmy, do you ever sleep? Like, when is downtime for you? Is there such a thing?
Oh, when I was younger, I did not sleep. I really didn't. I think back to some of my schedules, and I'm just in shock of how I am still alive today. I don't know it. Yeah.
But now
I'm much better about it now than I was.
Like when you just did the other show, and I was saying to Dan, when we do a show and we get like an hour and I'm done. I got nothing more to say.
Oh,
so we'll try to go easy.
Well, I have a lot to say. I'm looking forward to it. So you guys are brothers.
Yeah, we're brothers.
So I mean, this is what I like about it, because I have a brother that I grew up with, and we were super tight growing up. We're still super tight today. And we shared like all the nerdy stuff, like Star Wars and all of that. And so it was better having a brother, in my opinion.
And you're the older brother as well, right, Jimmy?
I am. Yeah. Most people think Billy is, because he's far more mature than I am. But no, I am.
Is it just you two?
We have a sister.
Have any other?
Yeah, we have a sister.
Okay. So you have this. We have a sister and we have an older brother, but he doesn't kind of figure in the plans at all.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, Mike. Jimmy, I got to ask you about this. I don't know if there's like a 12-step program for this or what, but our oldest brother, I couldn't think of anybody better to process this with than you, but I had because I'm an OT fan too. Mike and I grew up, in the 70s, and Mike's, more of a little bit of a late 60s baby too, but I had the original Kenner action figures from Star Wars, and when I moved to Florida, when I graduated high school years ago, I left all of them back at the house, and my mother subsequently gave them to my older brother's kids. Ooh. And I never saw them again.
Oh,
so they're like in a landfill somewhere. I don't know what happened to them. I don't have I had the Vader helmet case and all of that. So it still haunts me to this day. I mean,
And there's no way with our older brother you can even broach that subject.
No, you just can't bring it up to him.
It's gone.
No,
it's just gone.
Yeah. Kiss it goodbye. So I've struggled with, like, do I invest in the vintage line of the Kenner? I don't. It's not the same thing.
Go get them. Just go get them. You find them all over the place. Flea markets, comic conventions, classified ads. Just go out and collect them, because they're not as expensive as you would think. And I mean, some of them can be, obviously, but a lot of people just are dumping collections, and there's so much out there that you can probably put together a decent vintage collection for cheap.
Yeah, that's true. And you would say 3 3/4 inch. There's nothing else.
Oh yeah.
To collect.
That's just me. I mean, there's so much Star Wars to collect. I just can't flip a switch and collect these larger figures. I have one larger one here though, and I always keep him close by. He's my
that's Baby Yoda.
I gotta keep Baby Yoda close by.
Sweet Baby Yoda.
But like, here's a 3 3/4 inch Ahsoka.
Yes,
thoughts in Ahsoka.
You just featured that on the show, Rebel Force Radio, of course. The one that was amazing, that Reva, because we're going to ask you about this later in the conversation, but yes, the likeness is insane. Mike, look at this likeness here.
They're way better than the old.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
I mean, look at that. Look, that's
great. That's scary a little bit.
Insane.
Yeah, that's scary.
It's hard for me to tell.
So Jimmy, what is it? 15 plus years now you're on with Rebel Force Radio and you and Jason?
Well, first we were the Force Cast, And that's a
right.
show that Jason devised with his buddy Pete Nadel
Yes.
at theforce.net, which of course is one of the oldest, most reputable Star Wars news websites, theforce.net. It's where I used to go to get prequel rumors and things, or get news on the Star Wars special editions that were coming out. So they've been around for a while. And Jason hooked up with them. And I heard him on the podcast with his buddy Pete after they'd been doing it for about 4 months, and thought it would be really cool to get involved. I wanted to know people in Star Wars. And it seemed like the way people were doing it back then was they would build websites or forums, things like that.
Right. Forums were big.
And, that's fine. And I would lurk in those corners, but never really felt any need to participate in any Star Wars community until podcasting happened. And I knew I could do podcasting because my whole life, I've been working in radio. So on the studio end of things. And so when podcasting came along, I said, well, I can do this. And so it just seemed like a natural fit with Star Wars. And when I heard there were people out there who approached Star Wars in a way similar to how I did, which is to have fun with it. I mean, we take it seriously and everything, but we just like to have fun with Star Wars. And I heard Jason and Pete, and I'm like, oh, these guys got good chemistry. And I could tell what they were trying to do. And I'm like, I can help them get where they want to go. And so I just started doing that with those guys. And that took off for a while. I did some like spin-off podcasts for them. And it would occasionally appear on the main show, which was called The Forcecast. And that's a title that Jason Swank came up with. And then that went on for a little while. And then Pete got married and left to start a family. And I just stepped into the co-host chair, and it's been me and Jason since then. That was 2008. Wow. We stayed with the Forcecast, and then the Disney sale went down.
Right.
Star Wars was sold. And so that was like look in the mirror moments, like, this is now we're really at the launching pad here for something entirely new. Do we want to continue with this website as volunteers, or do we want to take it and go out on our own, sort of like Luke leaving the farm? We stared at the twin sun setting and walked away from that saying, hey, let's start our own thing. So that's how Rebel Force Radio was birthed. And it was just a desire for independence. And so we started RFR, and it's just been since January 2013. So we're coming up on 16 years of Star Wars podcasts.
Hard to believe.
That's amazing.
I don't remember podcasts 16 years ago. I don't know why. It just wasn't my thing, I guess. Yeah. But I was in the forums with video games a lot, and that kind of world, which is another nerdy world. And it's interesting you brought up Disney, because that was one of the questions I had was, did Lucas make a mistake by selling to Disney? What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's something that George himself struggles with from time to time.
Yeah, I think so.
I think George wanted to have his cake and eat it too. And he was running into a situation where technology was proceeding along and potential was there to do things, but they weren't quite there yet. And so he wanted his own independence. So he wanted to foot the bill and figure out a way to distribute a live action Star Wars TV show. He was going to build a studio in Marin County, not far from Skywalker Ranch. And ran into all kind of opposition from the people in that area. That area is a beautiful area, and environmental needs and priorities are very important to the people who live out there. And so they want to keep traffic down, all of this stuff. So they kept blocking all of George's efforts to build this studio. And so I think he just got fed up with it. And he got married. And you know what happens, guys?
Oh, we know what happens.
A lot of times your wife makes you get rid of all your cool stuff.
Yeah. Right.
And that's kind of what I think happened with George. So, so she may have influenced him to sell Star Wars, and it was becoming a burden for him to try to negotiate independence into the future and still hold on to the property. Right. So he thought he could cash out with Star Wars, and he was just going to sell it. Here's the IP, and everything that goes with it. But he wanted money that he saw Pixar get from Disney.
Right.
Now, Pixar started as a division of Lucasfilm. And then it branched off into its own thing with Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
But it started as a part of Lucasfilm. And so George was intimately involved in all things going on with Pixar. And when it sold, this was after it had become its own company. And then it was sold to Disney. And they got top dollar, like $7 billion or something.
Yeah.
$7.5 billion. And George looked at that and said, well, if Pixar is worth that, then I want $7.5 billion. And Bob Iger pushed back and said, no, you got nothing in the pipeline. Pixar comes at us and they have all of these animated features currently in development or production. Star Wars has got nothing except for Clone Wars and Detours.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And Detours hadn't even aired yet. So that's when George devised the idea of getting 7, 8, and 9 rolling. So he brings a bunch of people in the Skywalker Ranch, hires Kathleen Kennedy to be president of the company, and then believes that he has all of the pieces in place so he can sell it to Disney and still retain creative control, because Kathleen Kennedy will make sure that happens for him. And Bob Iger, Bob Iger got heavily involved in Star Wars.
Right.
Did not like what the story that they were developing and everything, and made it hard for Lucas then to work on Star Wars. And they kind of ghosted George, from what I understand. And they just sent him a script without talking to him. They were having meetings with him, and then the meeting stopped, and then all of a sudden a script showed up at his place with a post-it note on it that said, George, what do you think? And that made George upset. And that's why he felt like they weren't working with him or in the best interest of Star Wars. So he just said, all right, well, you're on your own. I'm not going to consult you guys anymore. He was under the assumption that he was going to consult them and have his fingerprints all over the Star Wars sequel trilogy. Like I say, he wanted to have his cake and eat it too. So he wanted the big fat payday, and he also wanted to maintain creative control. And Disney, they were like, we're not going to pay you $4.5 billion.
Right.
So you can continue to run it. If we're going to pay that kind of money, we are taking over. And they just weren't straight up with George about that. So, a very long answer to your question. Was it a good idea for George? Well, there was a lot of, I think, karma at work here. And I think that George suddenly devising the sequel trilogy and getting that into motion, really only to get top dollar from Disney. I think that kind of bit him in the butt a little bit. That's bad karma. And then once George, I think, started working on the sequel trilogy, those juices started flowing again, and he was committing himself to it more and more.
Right.
When all of a sudden the rug was pulled out from underneath him, and the message was sent that, hey, we don't need your collaboration here. And so that that upset him.
Yet he's still, like when they open Galaxy's Edge, he shows up for that, and a few other things. So, I remember seeing him on the set of Solo, but the other ones I don't think he was involved with much.
No, Solo because of Ron Howard.
Ron Howard and him have a really. That's like you brought up Pixar, and originally that's when Eisner was in at Disney, and didn't he almost blow that deal? Like, I mean, at one point I think Steve Jobs walked away, and then Iger came in to smooth things over. So it's kind of funny how the two deals went down.
It's a great history lesson, and I'm curious, and I should say, in full disclosure, I found you guys in 2017. It's going on 5 years now. Patreon supporter. I originally stumbled on the Forcecast, but then found you guys quickly thereafter. I consume the show constantly. I think you guys are the template for how it's done. May or may not have lifted a few ideas from the Rebel Force Radio podcast. But I'm curious, obviously with your broadcasting background, can you take us back a little further than that? How did that did you go to school for that? Like, what was the origin there?
Yeah. I always liked radio. And I like music.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's kind of a lot of where that came from. I mean, I didn't want like a real job ever in my life. Never wanted to. I always prioritized things that I was interested in. And it was, maybe I was just a little adrift in early college years, but I met a guy. I was working at a store in a mall. It was called Ingenuities. And it was like this 9th-rate Hammaker Schlemmer. Like it was filled with all the crap that Hammaker Schlemmer rejected. Okay. It was just like, it was, can I say, can I swear?
Sure.
It was a shit show. So I was working there, and this guy told me about a school in downtown Chicago called Columbia College Chicago. And it wasn't really that well known of a school yet at that time, but it was well known in broadcast industry. And it was shaping a lot of people who ended up locally in Chicago on the radio or on TV news or what have you. And so I'm like, well, this place sounds pretty cool. So I took the train, I went to the city, and I liked it. There's just something kind of calling out to me about this place. At the time, I am skipping a big portion of my educational career when I was in at the University of Kansas. And I didn't graduate from there, but that's how I got into radio, was there at KJHK.
Is that like the school?
Yes.
Station, yeah.
And they had a good program there. And it was really a lot of fun. And that's really when I started doing radio. And I had designs on going to journalism school at University of Kansas, but there were all these prerequisites, these pesky prerequisites.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy at all. So I drifted. In that summer, when I was working at the shit show, and and I met this guy, and he told me about Columbia College. I checked it out and took a summer course there on radio production. And it was like the first time in my life I sat down to do something for the first time, and I felt like, oh my God, I know how to do this. I can do this. This is perfect. I just like knew how to do it. Like there was some natural instinct when I was physically cutting tape of reel to reel, and splicing it and mixing beats and stuff. And it was all analog with reel to reel tape. I actually still have a reel to reel machine in the studio. which I got from WLS when they were throwing away all their analog gear. And it's come in handy a few times too, because I have a crawl space filled with reel to reel. My wife is also in the industry, and that's just how we saved things back in the day. This is before digital. Digital is awesome. I love digital. Don't get me. But so I knew how to do it, and so I pursued radio then, and I took more courses at Columbia College, which got me an internship at the Loop FM 97.9 in Chicago, which was the radio station. You know, it was like, that was the place. They had all the top personalities in town were there, and I just fit in there and ended up working with some really big names in radio over the years. Where you guys are out east, right?
Yeah,
I'm in
Orlando. He's in Boston.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But I've been in California for a while,
Yeah.
so
I worked in California. I worked in LA radio a little bit with the Jonathon Brandmeier show. That was a Chicago show. And he was really big in the 90s, 80s, and 90s and stuff. And so I still work with him. I still work with him on his archives and podcasts and things like that. And maybe radio in the future. Who knows? Maybe we'll do something. I don't know. But like, he's just a guy I've been with for 30 years, work with him, work with these two guys, Steve Dahl and Gary Meyer. Steve Dahl is the guy who's most famous for disco demolition at the White Sox game. He blew up all the disco records in the 70s.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That's his claim to fame. And
God, I remember that.
I'm kind of tight with a few of the the crazy guys behind that day. And Danny Bonaduce, of course, I worked with for a number of years. Danny Partridge.
Is he still doing radio?
Yeah, he is. He's in Seattle, and he's run into some mysterious health issues.
Yeah.
Really
affected his mobility and his speech. I haven't reached out to him when I heard all of this stuff. Probably the last time I talked to him was about a year ago when his mom died. But Danny's a great guy. But I mean, you know, he did. I mean, this mystery illness. I don't know what's going on with that. And I'm not qualified to say anything about it. But I saw Danny do things that were just inhuman. You know,
should have killed him.
Oh my God! Some of the
times over.
Oh God, the consumption.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I've never seen anybody drink vodka like the way that guy can drink vodka. And man, we were watching his show. This is after he moved, and my wife knew him, and my wife Wendy, and she also knew his wife Gretchen.
Okay.
And we're watching this show. It was with Danny. It was called like Breaking Bonaduce or something.
Yes, that's it. I remember that.
And I was watching it. I'm like, you know, I said to Wendy, like during a commercial break, I'm like, Danny's putting on an act for the cameras. I mean, this is an act. And she says, yeah, Danny might be putting on an act, but Gretchen ain't acting. And sure enough, they ended up separating and stuff. So, but that was a whole nightmare too, you know? So I think a lot of that stuff may have caught up to him.
Yeah. Because he did seem to get into a good situation and then would just kind of light himself on fire, you know?
Yeah. He never actually lit himself on fire.
No, that was Richard Pryor or whatever.
Richard Pryor was crazy, but I love Danny Bonaduce. He's a great guy, and I really don't, you know, I'm not qualified to say anything about anything except just comment on the great times we used to have in Chicago. And also in the mix, though he wasn't in Chicago, was Howard Stern.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He brought Howard Stern to Chicago, and those were crazy times and
wild.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been blessed to work with all kind of great personalities throughout the years, and then other people too, who would like guest co-host shows, you know, guys like Penn Jillette and Joe Walsh from the Eagles.
That's great. Tell me about, it's funny you're bringing this up because I was looking at this is, you know, Mike and I originally were doing like exclusive movie review type shows. And did you work with Siskel and Ebert at one
Oh
point?
yes, I did. I worked with both those guys. They hosted a few weeks of shows at the Loop back in the 90s. And I sat next to Roger at the Empire Strikes Back special edition at the media night for that. And I sat next to him. He fell asleep. And he was like, he was leaning on my shoulder. I'm like, Wendy Ebert is sleeping. And then there was this loud explosion, like in the asteroid belt.
And that jumped him up.
Oh, he did that thing where you rub the hand across the face. And you're like, what? Where? And then so he went up and he got himself some popcorn and a Coke and settled in and watched the rest of the movie, and then did not give it a very favorable review. He said Chewbacca was annoying in the thing. He's like, you didn't remember Chewie being so annoying. I'm like, Chewie annoying in Empire Strikes Back? How dare you, sir? But I liked Roger. I liked him. And I liked Gene too. Those guys were fun to work with, and there was no BS with those guys. There was no BS with those two. So I like them, and I liked Roger a lot when he got that cancer.
Yeah.
He really laid into Kyle Newman's film Fanboys.
Yeah.
And we were loosely involved in the behind the scenes of all that, just out of our friendship with Kyle Newman. And that movie went through all kind of controversial changes and stuff like that. And Harvey Weinstein, and he became Darth Weinstein during that process because of the way that he was exerting all of this studio control over Fanboys, and they were turning it into something it really wasn't. Kyle finally won back a lot of creative control over that with compromise, but it was a messy process, and it delayed the release of the film forever. So by the time it was finally coming out, we're like, oh, this is a victory, you know?
Right.
And just happy and proud for Kyle and Ernie Klein, the guy who went on to write Ready Player One. We forged all these friendships with these guys and really tried to raise awareness in Fanboys and stuff. And then when it came out, Ebert just crapped all over it, man. He just really crapped on it. So I wrote this whole scathing thing to Roger. It was pretty rough, and I didn't realize that Roger had cancer and that his jaw was removed. And
yeah.
Right.
I just didn't really. I mean, he was just kind of coming back at that time, and
Right.
And I found out about it, and I felt guilty about it. But he was like, "Hey, you know, this is what he lives for. This shit, you know, this is what he wants.
Right.
He wants his reviews to get people fired up. He was open to debate. He was really a mastermind at all of that stuff, and a really smart, sharp guy who knew movies. Man, he would he would host those 2-week-long things. I think at Cannes every year, and I mean, it was just like the most hardcore.
Yeah, he'd go through literally film, you know, like strip by strip, you know.
Yeah,
I remember he did it with Dark City, and it was just every piece of film he would analyze. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Did you reach back out to him after that, or?
Yeah. He published the piece.
Oh wow!
Wow.
So I got heat from people in the media that I know.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't back down to them because I knew that Roger liked it. He thought it was funny, and so and that back and forth might still be on his website, rogerebert.com. I haven't in a while.
Yeah, because it's still going. Somebody's still doing reviews for that website.
Oh yeah, they have a whole team.
Yeah.
And his wife Chaz runs that whole thing.
Yeah, he even at the end, you know, when he had his jaw taken out and he couldn't speak anymore, and he had he had one of those boards that spoke for, you know.
Oh yeah,
he was still sharp. There was nothing wrong with his brain.
His
It was
faculties
just-
were there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just the cancer just ate up his jaw. It was just terrible.
Yeah.
Really, really bad. Because the guy had so much to say.
Yeah.
And so there's a documentary about it called Life Itself.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen it.
That's
Really good.
hardcore, man. That is hardcore. And so I got involved in some of the marketing for that film via Stephen Stanton, who's a voice actor. You know who Stephen is?
The name's familiar.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know Dan knows because Dan is a RFR Patreon member.
Absolutely. And I follow Steven on Instagram.
Yeah, well, he's a great guy. And so I got to know him and his crew, back when he made his Star Wars debut in the Clone Wars and stuff. And so I got to know these guys that are in his orbit. And it's a real interesting gang. And one of them is an actor named Rick Fitz, who has appeared in every TV show you ever saw in the 80s and 90s and stuff. I mean, just working actor, and shows up in every show, like from Seinfeld to Star Trek. He's in all of it. And so I hung out with him at the Cannes Film Festival because Steven was doing the voice of Roger Ebert as the narrator of this documentary.
Wow.
He's a really gifted voice mimic. And he's known to Star Wars fans probably most famously as Grand Moff Tarkin in the animated series, but he's done all kind of voices for Star Wars. And so he does Roger Ebert and narrates the film as Roger Ebert, which is really crazy. People have a hard time wrapping their heads around that. And then they discover that he's a voice actor. So we went out to Cannes Film Fest, not Cannes. No, we did not fly overseas. We went to a Sundance Film Festival.
Oh, Sundance.
Yeah. And that was a trip itself. And so there was a whole gang of us, and my wife was there, and Stephen Stanton and his management team, and Rick, and some other friends of ours from the 501st and stuff. And we were out there, and I saw Life Itself the very first time it premiered at Sundance, and it was, it really hit home for me because there was so much Chicago stuff going on there, and then Roger's story was tough to swallow there. I mean, because they don't hold back,
right?
They show everything in this.
That's
stuff.
like here, and his wife, they showed how much she went through too.
Oh God,
going through it,
Yeah, she's a pretty tough woman, Chaz. Yeah. And so we got to go to parties with her and the filmmaker Steve James, and other people were at some of these after parties and stuff. So we went to Chicago, obviously, for the premiere of it here, LA for the premiere of it there. And who was at that one? Was that dude? Do you guys watch Walking Dead?
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. So it was the old dude. It was like second or third season. Old dude. He had the house, like Maggie's father.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Great actor.
And he kept the people in the barn.
Yes.
Or his wife or something was in the barn.
I forget his name, but yeah, I got introduced to him there, and he didn't look anything like he did on Walking Dead. He had a long white ponytail, and he was like wearing sandals and stuff. He looked like a hippie, But yeah, he was there. He was there at that screening. A bunch of people were there. But I'm not good at celebrity sightings. I have to be told who the people are, and unless it's, I mean, like Harrison Ford could walk in, and unless I knew he was going to be there,
Well, you've met so many of them, and you've had so many of them on the show. You just mentioned your friend and filmmaker Kyle Newman, who I know you just had on the show. And I didn't put it together until I realized, because he's got a new film out called One Up.
Yeah.
Which Mike has a bunch of these One Up pinball machines.
In his house.
And I thought, oh, geez, I need to tell Mike about that, because he didn't He doesn't know. I don't think he knows about Kyle or any of that.
I
But
don't think it's much of a connection between those games.
no.
I got the Star Wars one.
Oh, you
Oh,
do?
yeah.
Yeah, I figured
Yeah.
you must.
Yeah, right outside the store.
Yeah.
So how, with the collecting that you do, because Mike and I are always debating this. So he's a big physical media collector. As you can see behind him, that's Jimmy.
just
When I
nothing.
tell you, like thousands and thousands of movies,
Yes.
and I keep saying, dude, you got to go digital. You got where is that? You're going to put all this stuff. You're running out of room.
See, the
and
problem
I wonder,
is
what is that like? Yeah.
I like the extras, I listen to the
Extras.
commentaries and
Yes.
stuff like that. And
Yeah.
sometimes digitally, you only get a little piece of what's the
The
extras.
space. The space.
I know. It takes up this whole room.
Do you have like a wing in your house, Jimmy? Is it everywhere or?
See, you guys, the curse. It's the curse. But
It is.
I don't like physical media. I'm more digital.
Okay,
I
like
have
movies and
lugged
stuff, too.
road cases of tapes, analog tapes, coast to coast. I am so just like exhausted from physical media. So I digitize everything. And but I got these sons, okay? One is 23, one is 19. And are they collectors? They got the collecting gene curse from me. And so they collect vinyl.
Wow.
My son comes home with VHS tapes.
VHS.
He has, yes. I mean, I had to move him. I had to move, like, because I have a sizable Star Wars collection. I had to move it all out of the room. I had it in for 20 something years because my son Dylan's
Took it over.
Blu-ray collection is just like it was making his room bulge at the seams. And then all the vinyl. I can't believe the vinyl is back. Okay.
Yeah.
So, like, the vinyl, I have so much vinyl in my house. It's absurd. And
See, I kept replacing everything. So I don't have DVDs anymore. I used to have, it started with VHS and then Laserdisc.
That's how they get you.
And it just kept, and then I traded up to Blu-ray and now it's 4K. So I'm like about 5,000 deep now.
Yeah. No, I like that. That's a very focused bit of collecting there. I like just being able to have everything on this.
Yeah, that's nice.
This is what
nice.
All in my pocket, and it goes where I go, and I can tap into it whenever I want. And my days of physical media are behind me. I've retired from physical media, and but yet I have more physical media coming into the house than ever before because
that's funny.
It's my own fault. It really is. And I'm happy that they like the old stuff,
Yeah, sure.
I'm happy about that because.
Well, and your one son's a musician too, right?
Well, that's, so the vinyl.
Right.
Oh, the vinyl, so much of it. We have these big IKEA things with these cubby holes, and it's just packed with vinyl. And I have a crawl space that's filled with CDs and reel-to-reel tapes and beta tapes.
I've got beta tapes. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I have a Betamax player right there.
Do you really?
That's all audio. That's for audio though. So I mean,
okay.
I can play videos. I use it for audio. For the longest time, when I was at the Loop, we used Betamax to archive the shows. So that's what we use. That was the format.
Now, when it comes to production on Rebel Force Radio, is it just you? Is it all you? Wow.
Yes. That's all me.
Wow. How long does it take to because Dan does all the technical stuff because I
can't.
I don't know. I didn't grow up with it. Like I'm older than, I didn't have a computer even through law school. Yeah. Nobody had computers. We wrote everything. So before a show, like while we were waiting for you, I have to call him on the phone to try to get into this
Jimmy,
because I'm having all sorts of trouble. He's yelling at me,
screaming at him like, you just copy and paste it into the browser.
I'm
and I
like,
started thinking,
what
I
browser?
wonder,
What are you
does
talking about?
Jimmy, this must happen to you and Jason sometimes. There has to be a moment where you guys are just right, or no?
After 15 years, I would think.
There's always something.
And am I right? Am I right in assuming sometimes I watch the show because I love listening and I like to watch on the YouTube channel too. There's sometimes I'm watching you and I'll think, because I get this in my head from producing this show, I think he's tuned into something with the sound right now or the video. Like something's irritating Jimmy right now because he's hearing something or he's seeing something that's annoying him. Is that true? Do you get obsessed with it like that?
I'm getting better. I'm getting better at it. Over the last few years, I've chilled more, I think, where I just let things bounce off of me. In the old days, it was so hard to get anything done that, with technology and stuff.
Yeah.
That you just don't want to go back to that time. And so when occasional tech hiccups happen, you just get that helpless feeling. But I'm getting better with it.
You should see the abuse I get. Your chair.
That's fair.
You'll stop. Your chair is squeaking.
Yeah, I would mention that.
You can relate. Yeah, you can relate.
Or, somebody when they're talking and their nostrils are whistling and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I get all of that. Yeah, I get all of that.
Happen before I say something, and then I look like a dick. I mean, these are the things you have to put ego aside when it comes time for quality and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Something that used to bother me a lot, especially in the old days when we were audio only and I couldn't see what was going on. It was like Jason would be drinking a cocktail with the ice cubes in it or something.
Oh, yes. Right.
What are you doing, man? What are you doing? One time I said on the show, I'm like, all right, we're going to do a movie commentary for like Empire Strikes Back or something. So I said, all right, we got the popcorn. We're going to be here next week. We're going to be ready to go. And Jason heard me say the popcorn thing. And he took it very literally. During the whole show, he's talking with a mouthful of popcorn. I didn't really notice it until I was listening to the playback afterwards. And I was hearing it in crystal clarity. It's a mouthful of popcorn.
You can't edit out those kernels. I mean, you're screwed at that point, right?
And he got like theatrical with the popcorn too, where he would like, take a bite of it and go, oh God, look, to sell the whole experience of seeing a movie with us, so I got kind of prickly about that. And the thing that drives everyone crazy is before we go live, there's moments where we're talking before we go live. People start doing the show before the show has begun, and so they'll be talking about things that I think we should be revealing in the show itself. So I always say, save it for the show. I'll cut them up, and I just look like a dick every time I do it.
Well,
but I mean, you have to preserve.
Listen, it's two dicks here in this space, right, Mike? Because
he calls me
literally, Jimmy. I say that exact thing to him. Save it for the show.
Save it for the show. What are you doing?
He calls me on his way home every day, and we'll be talking, and I'll say, "Oh, last night I saw this." Save it for the show. Yeah, but let me just tell you this one. Save it for the show. That's all.
It's an editor's mind. It's a producer's mind. That's just it's the way it is. It's the way. Now, you're years into this. We're only a couple of years into this.
Yes.
And we've Mike wanted to quit 12, 15, 30 times maybe, mostly because of our relationship.
Quit.
I've quit on you
3 times.
I've quit on life a few times too, but
oh, no.
But no, we I just was curious. Did you guys ever obsess over the numbers? Do you fall into that rabbit hole? I mean, a lot of podcasters, I think, slip into that because it makes me think of something you guys have talked about on your show, which I think you coined this hashtag, just enjoy Star Wars.
Yes.
But have you ever found where you get consumed with that part of it? Like, we got to grow it. We got, like your YouTube channel is growing and growing and growing. And I know you've been putting more effort into that, but
Yeah.
does it become a hindrance at some point to you?
You don't, you just
Takes the fun away
you just
from
do what you do, you just you put your head down and you just plow ahead.
it. Yeah.
And I find that if you're consistent and you put out good quality stuff and you're reverent to the material and relevant, you stay with what's going on, you keep up with everything, and you respect your audience, I think then everything just kind of falls into place. That's the most important thing, is just I prioritize the listener first. So in those nights when maybe I had a heavy work day or something and I'm getting to the podcast late or whatever, it's easy just to say, well, I'm gonna go watch TV and eat some Ben and Jerry's till I fall asleep and blow it off, but I don't, because people they always expect it. So I always try to meet those deadlines, those self-established deadlines, and show respect to everyone who's expecting the show at a certain time, and maintain that consistency. That's the stuff I obsess over, also I get ideas, like the creative stuff. I don't want to think about it. I want to make it real. So I obsess over that, where it's like I have an idea for something we're going to do on the show, and that might require some production work or whatever, some prep. Then I obsess over that. That's the type of stuff that pushes me, is like getting ideas and making them become real. Or I don't like to think, I like just to have things hit me and then make them real and then move on to the next thing and just keep that cycle going nonstop forever and ever. And so that's kind of what's kept my head afloat. Have I ever sat back and said to myself, dude, what are you doing here? Why are we doing this? What is it? Of course you always do that, especially after 16 years. Every once in a while something will pop up, but I mean, it's never anything that has gotten in the way of anything. And all right, one example was I was flying to Japan. Okay. For Star Wars.
Wow.
Star
Okay.
Wars. This is Star Wars Celebration, Japan, 2008. And I was flying out there, and I'd been doing the podcast thing for a couple of years, and I'm going out to this country, and it's like 28 hours door to door or something.
Yeah, it's a long trip.
And on that flight, there were moments where I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because I was really focused on a radio career at that time as well, and there were times when I'd have to discipline myself to balance the Star Wars and the radio and make sure that the radio was a top priority. That has shifted over the years a great deal. But back in this time, I was still very much in the thick of a radio career. And so it was difficult. I think a lot of podcasters have to go through that, because doing a regular podcast can become quite time consuming. And especially if you're doing pre-show prep, if you're booking guests, if you're editing a show, if you're doing video, and now with us, we've been doing it so long, we have an archive to deal with and things like that. And it requires maintenance, and you got to pay attention to things and stuff. And so the pendulum is shifted for me over time to where the podcast is a priority, and having the podcast has given me the affordability to do other things too. So I'm not so locked down with a 9-to-5 career as I was in the past, but I'm doing a podcast. I'm still working with Jonathon Brandmeier. I'm still doing other radio things. I'm still producing commercials all the time. So I do, a lot of different things, but I can always get super hyper focused on the podcast whenever I need to. And that's the best thing about it.
And somewhere in there, you see Wendy and the kids.
Yeah, well, I work from home, so
Right.
that's pretty handy. Yeah.
What is the so what does that look like? The evolution of, like Mike, I think, was starting to ask, like the turnaround. So you get an idea, and then what does that look like behind the scenes between you and Jason until I hear it on the podcast? Because it's just you do it every week, and it's always great.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean it. It's always good.
Yeah,
that's the other thing. I always try to put out something that I know is going to be something I want to spend my time listening to, and I think that's really important too, is to put that kind of personal touch on it. Is this something I want to be listening to? And when the answer is yes, then it's a win-win-win. I work fast. I've had to, for years I worked in morning radio, and ideas come up on the fly, and you got to make it real. And it really trained me to be, I was fast even for radio producers. I still am. You can match me up with anyone. So that's what I think has really benefited our cause,
Yeah.
Jason Swank himself, he's a natural talent. That's all I can say about Jason. I mean, he's really good. I've worked with great radio announcers and presenters and show hosts and all that, and I put Swank up there with any of them. He's really, really good. I got very lucky in having a good Zin to my Zang,
Yeah. It's a great match. It really is.
That doesn't get lost on us either. And we are like vastly different dudes,
Yeah.
in so many ways. We are an odd couple, but we're also best friends through all of this process and stuff. And I think we've really learned how to make our chemistry come across on the show, and how to work within each other's realms. We complement each other. That's so, I mean, you guys are brothers, so that probably comes easy, because the only other guy that I could think of who gets on a mic who we complement each other pretty well is Billy Mack. And he's my brother, and he doesn't really have any broadcast career. He was telling somebody last week how I'm more extroverted than he is. And that was kind of funny. I don't think it's so much that, because Billy's in 2 rock bands, I mean, he puts himself out there, but I might be more of a risk taker than Billy. I will say that. I will say that. So, and I think that's important to take risks. I think it's important to trust your gut, especially when you're doing creative things. You have an idea for something. How can you make it the most effective? Well, trust your gut and run with it. And so I think that's always important too. And they're not always home runs, but good ideas are something that you really need to nurture all that. So that's kind of my priority with all of that. I got off the beaten path with my answer, but
no, it's amazing to think, because I mean, just so blessed that there's been all this content to sort of continue. Like if it didn't exist, if tomorrow Star Wars, God forbid,
yes,
what is the podcast about? Is there a podcast? I mean, I know you had the Bond cast and some other. You did one with Wendy, right? You guys had the
Snyder Marks. Yeah, we did that for a long time.
Snyder Marks, right? Exactly.
The Better Call Saul cast.
What would it be?
Oh, okay. So if like Star Wars went away, I think me and Swank could do like a general talk show where we talk about anything.
Yeah.
Anything and everything.
Because of that chemistry.
Yeah. Now it's more fun doing the Star Wars. In my opinion, I mean, our whole friendship was forged from that, but we've gotten to know each other so well over the years that like, I know pretty much everything about the guy, I think. There's definitely, it's more dimensional than just Star Wars. And I think we could do a general talk show. I really do. But, for now, we'll just, we'll keep it fun and keep it Star Wars. And there was a period of time when George Lucas, Star Wars seemed kind of rudderless, and George was losing interest right before he sold it. And it didn't seem like much was on the horizon for Star Wars. And from what we understand, George was kind of acting apathetic about it and just whatever, and saying, when I'm dead, Star Wars is going with me and all. So there's times in the past.
It's funny because some fans, they have this love it, hate it relationship all the way back to the despecialized. I'm not, they put in extra effects. I'm not watching that. I have to have the originals.
Oh yeah.
And then I'm in a chat. I wish you were with me. I was in a chat. I was just, somebody in the chat room, and it was a video game podcast, but for some reason they were talking about Obi-Wan, bashing the shit out of it.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, put up a number of what you think it should be rated 1 to 10. And I put up an 8, and I was hesitant. I said, there's only 4 episodes so far. There's still more to come.
Yeah, it hasn't finished.
So this isn't early. Man, they were bashing me.
Ooh.
They were like, 8. How can you give it an 8? For some reason, they're hating on Reva.
Yeah.
Moses. I don't know why do they not like her? They just want to hate on her. And I don't get it. I was like, what?
There she is.
Yeah, there she is.
Well, yeah, with Jar Jar. I mean, it's not like it's anything.
Yeah, you go to Jar Jar
Last Jedi. I mean, it's nothing new with certain segment of the fan base, if that is even a segment of the fan base. But yeah, sometimes you think is it just trolls? It's just to stir up stuff.
Yeah, I was shocked because they're doing the whole show on it, but it was a very negative. I'm surprised I hung in as long as I did.
Well, there were. I mean, there's flaws with her character. There's no doubt about it. I can't wrap my head around anything having to do with her character, but not gonna just like completely derail the show for me. And people are like that. They're so judgmental. They throw down entire diatribes condemning the entire show.
Right, exactly.
You do that when when there's scenes with Ewan McGregor, who's a great actor, bringing back this role to life. I've always liked the prequels, so I had to negotiate my way through rough waters during the prequel era. I did negotiate my way through rough waters with the Han shot first era, and I have my own feelings about that as well. But heck, I even remember when the Ewoks were the teddy bears and
right,
rapping all over Return of the Jedi. It's the Star Wars has really run out of steam here at the end. People would say about Return of the Jedi, and bringing back the Death Star and all of this. Was George Lucas running out of ideas? Even before that, Empire Strikes Back, Yoda's on the screen. People were saying, "Oh, look, it's Grover, it's
Muppet.
It's the Muppet Show." I mean, people were poking fun of it. Nowadays, people talk about Yoda with great reverence and stuff.
Yeah.
So taste change and stuff, and I've noticed people shifting their to a more nostalgic edge when it comes to looking back at the prequels. I don't hear too much George Lucas raped my childhood anymore. You hear a lot of people saying my childhood was the prequels.
Right.
I love Star Wars. That's why I went and watched the original trilogy and read all the books and all the comic books. It's because it was the prequels set me down that road. That's a whole generation of kids are now in their 30s and they have disposable incomes and they're raising their own families, and they look back with nostalgia at the prequel trilogy. And so tastes have changed, things have shifted. But nowadays what we're dealing with is this echo chamber, internet echo chamber. We all got the microphone, we all got the social media accounts, we all got the YouTube channels and everything else. And so we're all just like barfing out all of our opinions all over the place. Plus we know about exactly how the sausage is getting made a lot of the times, and we interact with some of these creatives and actors via social media and all that. So like the whole thing has changed into this, people, they hear others say things and then that becomes like gospel, and then they repeat it and then they put a spin on it that takes it up to the next level and all this, and nobody's just like enjoying Star Wars anymore.
Yeah.
That's why I say just enjoy it. I mean, listen, nobody has to say it's perfect. We're not saying it's
Right.
storytelling and stuff. And I mean, this is a thing for Star Wars to even still be around at this time. It's insane. When I
Right.
think back, 30, 40 years ago, and I can think back that long ago, and I remember what it was like. And I remember when it was all coming to an end with Return of the Jedi, and people were saying then that Star Wars had run out of steam. And here we are, there's been 2 additional trilogies, there's been 2 additional films, there's been all of these streaming series and animated series, books and comics. The whole mythology has grown into this big giant thing, and it's going to be impossible to keep creating a film out of this content that's going to be ranked up there with the all-time greats like the original Star Wars was.
Mm-hmm.
People talk about that film being an all-time classic in the same breath as films like The Wizard of Oz and Citizen Kane and The Maltese Falcon and Jaws and The Godfather and all of them. I mean, those are the films,
Yeah.
Well, how many times are you going to catch that lightning in a bottle? It's impossible. Star Wars has become this whole thing. And so what bothers me about the approach that a lot of the creatives are taking with Star Wars nowadays is they think to be authentic, you have to go back to George Lucas's inspirations. You have to go back to the Kurosawa films. You have to go back to the Westerns. You have to go back to this and that and whatever, because George Lucas
Right.
inspired by that. But no, that's not the approach to be taking. They need to be going back to Star Wars and building off that, because that's the foundation. To go back to the things that inspired George Lucas is almost like trying to reinvent the wheel. The wheel has already been invented. So we need to build cool cars and vehicles to make those wheels move.
Mm-hmm.
And so the foundation is Star Wars, and they should always be looking at that foundation and not ignoring it, because a lot of times it gets ignored. People go, "Oh, well, I saw the Hidden Fortress. Now I know how to make Star Wars." No, you don't, because that's just one ingredient in the whole thing. And so you got to look at the end result. And so that's where I think things are going a little askew. But it still doesn't diminish my enjoyment at being thrown back into that universe for new events, new situations. A lot of people didn't like The Rise of Skywalker, but Emperor Palpatine's back in it. That's great. What's I mean, they're, without being judgmental, without being super critical, and just enjoying the times you get to go back into that universe. And then, if it strikes you, the storytelling affects you in a way that might be reminiscent to how the storytelling affected audiences in the 70s and 80s with the original trilogy. If they strike that nerve, then more power to them. But I mean, realistically thinking, the odds are always going to be against these guys. We just need to lock in and find the foundation of Star Wars and focus on that more than anything. And I think they'll be successful.
And do you think they can find that again in the films? I mean, Favreau and Filoni, obviously. I mean, I was like you. I was in tears when they brought Luke back. Return of the Jedi was the first, like Jason, I think, first one I saw in the theater. And so that was just, it really connected with all that nostalgia. But are you still optimistic about the future of Star Wars films?
How they don't have a Mandalorian film in production right now still just blows my mind.
Yeah.
It's like they paint themselves into a corner over there. Well, can't touch the Mandalorian because that's the anchor of the streaming.
Right.
The streaming channel, and that's our top priority now. Okay, well, yeah, but what about the audience's top priority? See, again, they're forgetting who the top priority is, and that's what takes me back to podcast production, is that always the audience is my top priority, and I want to give them what they want. I'm not saying let the inmates run the prison or anything, but keep them your top priority. And Disney is not doing that right now. I think because Star Wars is a cinematic franchise. And so now it's been boiled down to this television franchise. And I think that people are having a hard time accepting that because we're used to seeing Star Wars on the big screen, setting new standards for filmmaking. But again, that's a lightning in the bottle kind of situation. I just think that to pull themselves out of movie theaters altogether, like they've done, and show, publicly displaying very little focus on where the film franchise can go by saying, well, the streaming is the priority, but the streaming isn't. That's not Star Wars. That's not the cinematic franchise.
That's like, you've been to Galaxy's Edge.
Yes.
Danny lives like 20 minutes away, I think.
Yeah, just going to mention that.
What disappoints me is that, they don't have the characters and it's not interactive like they claimed it was going to be. They built a couple of rides and that's great. But I think, I watched these TV series, the streaming stuff, and it seems like Favreau and Filoni got their finger on the pulse and they know what to bring in new, like when they brought in Jabba the Hutt's twins. And why don't they have that? I'd love to see that come around the corner in Galaxy's Edge and be, you know what I mean?
Well, that's why Mike and I have railed on that a few times on the show, because with Chapek at the helm, and I think I heard they've just re-upped his contract.
They did for 3 more years.
I'm here in Orlando, and so the park experience has suffered so tremendously. And something like Galaxy's Edge, it's like they're so resistant to infusing some of the rest of the IP in there. When that's what, as you said, appreciate the listener, appreciate the fan. That's what we want. I want to see that.
Yeah. Well, they want to reinvent the wheel.
It's so frustrating. It's just such a swing and a miss. All right, so we don't want to keep you all night, but I do want to ask you, aside from Star Wars, because we talked about Star Wars more than I thought we would, to be honest. I said that he talks about that all the time. He's not going to want to talk about Star Wars, but
there's a reason I talk about it all the time.
But what are you
talking about it
when you're not watching Star Wars? What are some of your other things that you're watching? Like, are you into some of the streaming series and things that are out now? No,
I don't watch. I do not watch.
Wow,
hardly any television, and that's been the case for the better part of the last 10 or 12 years. I just don't watch TV.
How about with films? Like, what are your top 5 films?
Yeah, what's the top 5
outside of Star Wars? We'll leave Star Wars out of it.
All right. Well, it's always impossible, but I like Pulp Fiction.
Okay,
the original Jaws.
It's right there.
There you go.
Godfather.
Nice.
Of course.
I like Gladiator a lot. Good. I think that's a great movie. I love Gladiator. How many did I give you?
Is that 5 or 4?
Does Indiana Jones count?
Yeah.
I tend to watch Indiana Jones whenever that's on.
All solid films.
Yeah. But like for television though, I don't watch like series, I do watch every Chicago White Sox game. I watch every Chicago Blackhawks game. I watch the Bulls when they're good, which means I haven't been watching them much lately. They were okay last year.
The Celtics are coming back, which has been a nice it's been a long time.
What else? I watch reruns of The Office. I watch reruns of Seinfeld. I have been through periods where I'm like a broadcast news junkie. But over the last year and a half, I've like forced myself not to watch that stuff.
Yeah. For good reason.
I just feel like it's so manipulative and stuff.
Yeah, some of
I don't want to drink their Kool-Aid.
Yeah, some of it is shot so much more cinematic now. Like I don't feel like I'm watching a series, more like I'm watching a bunch of short little movies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, other than that, though, I'm like you. I watch a lot of the older stuff.
So also, what do I watch on TV? Oh,
and if you're a sports fan,
yeah,
there's not much more time in the day.
Well, that's
True.
just it. That's just it. And plus, you know, sometimes the sports you can have it on and be doing other things too.
Right.
Which I like. Guilty pleasure. I have a summertime guilty pleasure, and I've been watching the show with my family for like 20 years.
I know what it is, Jimmy. I know what it is.
I'll say it. It's Big Brother on CBS.
Yes. Yes.
He used to watch that.
I had it. I had it in my show notes. I was going to ask you about that
What are
because
you watching that?
I've seen I fell off the Big Brother train a couple seasons back, but I was there from day one, episode 1.
Yeah.
Going way, way back. And when I heard that on the show not that long ago, you mentioned, it's like, oh my God, he watches Big Brother. I couldn't believe it.
It's the worst. I you know, every year I say multiple times, I'm like, I can't believe I watch this show.
It's incredibly terrible.
But it's fun to watch with my family. And
Yeah.
you know, it all came out of the Survivor. When Survivor's first season happened, that was a big deal. You know, Survivor was so much fun. And so Big Brother was in that wave of the reality shows that came on in the wake of that. I think it was on in the UK for a while before it came to the States. But yeah, we watched it and poked fun at it a lot of times. But then it was like every time like it would roll around in the summertime, we'd be watching a stupid show. And with the house guests and the Zing bot and all this stupid and I mean, I just can't believe I watch it. And it just is like a summertime thing. It's just fun in the summer to, you know, go back in that house with all these idiots and learn about stupid personalities and who they are and all this stuff. And
well, remember, Jimmy, when you said you don't want to think, that's a perfect show.
Sometimes you just want to shut your brain off.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this season is shaping up to be a good one too. So
I'll have to catch back up then with that endorsement. That's a good coming from Jimmy Mack. That's a good endorsement. Listen, we could talk to you all night long, but I do appreciate you being on here with my big brother for a little while, at least.
Well, you guys are great. You guys are, I love this show.
I got to tell you, Jimmy, I mean, honestly, it's I said to Mike, we could wrap it up after this conversation. I'd be good because you really do, for me, set the template. I admire so much what you do. And I listen to the show constantly. It's to the point where you may have had this experience being in broadcasting for so many years, but I remember listening to Larry King on the radio when I was a young kid. And there was something about it that was comforting to me to listen to. And it's like that with Rebel Force Radio. I listen to, sometimes it's my white noise. I just put it on and I listen to it. But it's so entertaining. It's such high quality. And you know, it's inspiring as a couple of chuckleheads that are trying to do a podcast too, like every other person in the world. But so yeah, just appreciate what you do for not only the fans of Star Wars, but like I said, you know, couple of guys here that are just trying to figure it out, you know, 2 years in. And
you guys are doing it the right way. You're having fun and you're keeping it real, and you're just, you know, being yourselves, throwing yourselves out there. You know, it's you take a risk doing this kind of thing. And you never know.
Do we got an episode coming out this week? RFR?
Yeah.
Okay.
We had an episode planned. We had to scrap it though because one of our guests had to bail. So
Gotcha.
It'll probably be you know, just me and Jason this week. Probably getting caught up on things that we push back, you know, each and every week. It seems like we have more things to do on the show than we have time for. And we try to keep the show at 2 hours.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always happen that way. And so that's another thing is don't put rules on yourself as a podcaster either, because there's no rules. And that's the best thing about it is that it's free form. It's growing, evolving, you know, it just is like a beast of its own. So we try to keep it to 2 hours and we're happy when we can. But
well, that's another testament though, is because I consume those episodes you do, 2 hours, whatever. I'm like, oh man, another 30 minutes would be great. You know?
Oh, thanks. You know, it's almost like built to be listened to in shifts, you know, in pieces. And because it's like it's segmented the show, and so it's sort of designed to be listened to over multiple periods, keep you busy throughout the week. Sometimes I think to myself, well, wouldn't it just make sense to put out like 3 shows as opposed to one just big one? But I don't know. It's there's no rules, and that's just the way we've always done it. So keep it kind of natural and stuff. So
Yeah,
I'm a big music. I listen to a lot of music too. That's something that takes up a lot of my time and probably keeps me from watching more TV and stuff. But I like jam bands and improvisational music, and there's no rules there. It's wherever the song takes them, you know. Let the music play the band, that kind of thing. That's sort of how I look at the podcast too. So,
were you a Deadhead?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Yeah,
I am a Deadhead.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I got over here. This was a gift from Swank. It's a little.
Oh, no way. Oh,
nice.
Jerry Garcia. That's great.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
So yeah, I saw Jerry live probably 25 times back in the days. So.
Did you really? Wow.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you, Jimmy. Give our best to Jason, by the way.
I will. It was a pleasure.
And Billy Mack and Puppet Lando.
Puppet Lando, yeah. You know.
We need some Zero the Hutt on the episode this week.
This week.
Yeah, let's get some Zero the Hutt back.
It's a little late in the plan.
There's a lot of contracts involved with him. A lot of negotiation to get Zero. He's very high maintenance. I'll check with his people.
Thanks for being so generous with your time.
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy.
Dan and Mike, you guys are great. You guys got a fun show here. And
well, we love you guys. I'll be listening this week, so I'll be looking forward to my next episode.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Rebel Force Radio, Jimmy Mack, live in the flesh. Thanks so much. Good to see you.
Thanks. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye.
All right, folks. Jimmy Mack, Rebel Force Radio. I've been your host, Dan Smith.
For Old Brother
Podcast. Alongside me, as always, of course, is my brother from the same mother, Mike Smith. And we will see you next time.
Bye, everyone. I'm going to get my hair cut before the next episode.
Would you? Yeah, and I think Jimmy's combing his hair right now. So. You guys both need a hairdo, a hair makeover.
I need a Flowbee. Just do it myself.
A vacuum cleaner that cuts your hair.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, that'll be next. The Old Brother infomercial. Good night, folks.